I just introduced myself. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Steve Jones, Support Officer with Welsh Schools Athletics Association, and also the Safeguarding Lead Officer for Welsh Athletics. It is my pleasure today to introduce Gerald Davis. Gerald is a former student of Cardiff College of Education, obviously now, which has now become Cardiff Met. Took up his first teaching post at Baysleg in Newport after qualifying in 1980 and remained there until 1992. He then moved to Aventave in 1993, becoming head of PE there, and remained in post until retiring from teaching in 2010. He then did some supply work at Corpus Christi in Cardiff until 2016. Gerald's been a district officer in Glamorgan Valleys since 2004 and remains the honorary treasurer of that school district. He is currently in his second term of office as Welsh Schools Athletic Association chair, and only 2 other individuals have served more than 1 term of office. It is my pleasure to introduce Gerald to you all today.
Thank you, Steve. Good afternoon and welcome to the Welsh Schools Athletic Association and Welsh Athletics Joint Virtual Schools Athletics Conference. It's great to see so many of my old friends and some new ones, of course, here now with us today. And I thank you massively as chairman of the Welsh Schools AA, and at a time when you have already had 12 months of truly extraordinary times for the education service. Looking through the sign-ups and attendee list, it is great to see so many looking to improve and add to their teaching of athletics in our schools. We are fully aware of how busy everyone is and how precious is your free time. I know from my colleagues in the Glamorgan Valley Schools District and from friends in Cardiff schools that even before the COVID crisis, that a PE teacher's time was like trying to fit a quart into a pint pot. I apologise for the old imperial measures, but that's me showing my age. In advance, I'd like to thank all of the presenters and contributors, the development team at Welsh Athletics, for pulling this together. The work they do behind the scenes is phenomenal and is all year round. They are there for you if you need them. Now, my disclaimer. I can't promise that everything you see and hear today will be relevant to your personal school situation. But please, if there is something you see, hear, or do today that helps you make a change to how you teach athletics for the better, then it will have been worthwhile. Like every other teacher before you, including myself, you will add new ideas and try different things to add to your own skills bank to help your pupils develop their athletics to a higher level and therefore get more pleasure from it. Now I'm delighted to hand over to Andrew Jenkins, also of the Welsh Athletics, to help you through today's proceedings.
Okay, thanks, Gerald. Right, our first presenter today is going to be Hannah Pretty, but unfortunately she can't be with us. She's gone camping in the rain and cold in West Wales, having a well-deserved break after presenting at all the other conferences we've had for clubs over the last few weeks. Right then, so she's done a pre-recorded presentation for us, and Hannah's been coaching young people in athletics at grassroots level now for over 10 years. And 3 years ago, she set up a club called the Little Lions Athletics that delivers fun athletics-based sessions to under-8s. It focuses on teaching them the fundamental movement skills through games and play. And for the last 18 months, she's been leading on the Welsh Athletics Physical Literacy offer called Starting Blocks. And we'll be launching that later this year. So the video is about 10 minutes long, and Zoe is going to press play for us now.
So what is Starting Blocks? We're quite fortunate in athletics that the skills in our sport, running, jumping and throwing, contribute to numerous other sports. So we wanted to develop a resource that develops the fundamental movement skills children need to be physically literate. Through our various existing resources developed over the years, we picked and adapted the best cards to include in starting blocks. We had a soft launch over the first lockdown. We wanted to offer the opportunity for children to be active whilst at home. You might have seen some of this on social media and on the Starting Blocks website. This allowed us to gain feedback on the content and have it tested, for want of a better word, by the age group who will be using it. The feedback was positive and reaffirmed that what we had developed was appropriate for this age group. So Starting Blocks is Welsh Athletics' physical literacy offer for primary school age children. And as we know from the work that Sport Wales have done, physical literacy is the physical skills plus the confidence plus the motivation and lots of opportunities. We want to make sure that every child has these opportunities to take part in sport through our programme. Starting Blocks is fun, and this was really important to get across in the resource and through the delivery of the lessons. If it's fun and exciting and engaging, children will have a better experience and want to continue taking part. It's exciting, it's inclusive, and we want to make sure that we're giving children the confidence to participate in physical activity and to start their lifelong journey in sport. Starting Blocks also helps to develop fundamental skills through fun games and activities. So as I've mentioned, Starting Blocks is a licensed product endorsed and supported by Welsh Athletics. It is a complete resource available to schools, clubs, local authorities and private providers. The full delivery pack includes, and we will look at these in a little more detail shortly, 25 activity cards, 13 challenge cards, a delivery guide to support those teaching Starting Blocks, a skills passport, which has 6 levels, comprehensive orientation workshop for all deliverers. There's currently 2 places allocated per licence, but more can be purchased if necessary. The activity cards, challenge cards and skills passports are all available in Welsh too. So let's have a look at the activity cards in a little more detail now. As I mentioned, there's 25 cards. They're all user-friendly and inclusive games. All game cards offer differentiations via the step principle, allowing the deliverer to make sure that every child can take part. Each year, we will add more cards to constantly refresh the content and offer further exciting opportunities for children to take part in Starting Blocks. The game cards themselves build in various competencies from the physical literacy framework and give coaches and teachers the key things to look out for with each competency. On the cards, there are instructions to set the activity up. They are all colour-coded at the bottom with some squares. So on this card you can see now, you will see a red A, an amber C and a green M, standing for agility, coordination and movement skills. These match the skills framework on the passport, so as a deliverer you can easily match which cards work on which skills. The step principle is also used to help differentiate, and we provide step examples on every card to help you to offer opportunities and adaptations for all pupils. The Skills Passport allows the deliverer to track a child's progress. These are designed for each child to have one for themselves. The framework is aligned to the Sport Wales Physical Literacy hierarchy of competencies, which you can see listed on the left-hand side with all the colourful boxes. We've also added in health and wellbeing to link it as closely as we can with the new curriculum. The passport provides clear guidance on how to observe a child's ability and progress and key things to look out for. This is also linked on the activity cards where you will be able to observe what skills are being worked upon, but also what you're likely to be able to see. It provides parents and children with an indication of their progress. And as I've mentioned, there are currently 6 levels to complete. Each level, the skills develop and progress, but are designed to be used for stage, not age, so allowing the skills passport to be truly child-centred. In terms of using the skills passport, you can see at the top of the columns there are 3 boxes in red, amber and green. The red box indicates that you've seen that skill once. The amber box indicates that you think that the skills are getting there. You've maybe seen it on more than one occasion. And the green box is consistent, so you can consistently see the child performing that skill in a variety of environments and different game formats. So for example, if we take the balance skill, you can see that that says the child can stand on one leg for 10 seconds. So I might observe a child doing that once, so I can tick that. A few weeks later, they might be able to do it a little bit more consistently within a game format or within the activity that they are doing. And then I'm happy that they're consistent in that skill when I can see them doing it consistently throughout whatever environment they're playing in and can consistently hold that balance for 10 seconds. This applies for all the skills on the card, so you would make sure you keep an eye on how the children are doing the skills, and you can easily just tick a box when you think you've seen it to make it really easy to observe how they are developing. The challenge cards introduce an element of competition and a way for teachers to observe physical progress in a non-threatening way. It also is designed to help motivate children to see how they are physically progressing through their own success rates through the various challenges. The cards are designed to be fun personal challenges as opposed to who is the best in the group of a particular skill or movement. We hope that this will add to the children's positive experience of sport and physical activity, whilst introducing them to competition in a non-threatening way. As I've mentioned previously, there are 13 different challenges at the moment, and these are designed to be done as a quick challenge in the lesson. So you could either do it in the middle of the session or just towards the end, wherever you feel it fits best. The other challenges that are available, as you can see in front of you, there's 5 balance challenges there. We've also got challenges based around speed and reaction, coordination challenges, and then we've got several athletic specific ones which cover speed bounce, shuttle run, high stepper, standing long jump, vortex throw and the seated push throw. Some of you may recognise that these link in quite nicely to some of the indoor sports hall athletics events too. Also included in the resource is a comprehensive guidance document for the starting blocks deliverer. This has been designed to complement and support the orientation workshop. It includes top tips to deliver run, jump and throw activities and gives you some really key delivery tips to make your sessions and lessons more effective. It also provides information on how to use the resources and the skills passport. As you can see on the picture on the slide, there's some examples there from the delivery guide of how you would use an activity card. So what are the key benefits for schools? Within the Starting Blocks programme, you'll receive everything that you need to be able to effectively deliver it. This includes a comprehensive resource package that will help develop your children's physical, social and emotional skills. You'll also have the confidence in knowing that you are delivering an NGB endorsed programme. The orientation and delivery workshop, which will help to upskill and increase confidence of the teachers delivering the lessons and programme, improving the quality of your lessons and the children's experience too. There'll also be a national marketing campaign that accompanies this, so your parents will be aware of it as well. And it's an opportunity to link pupils in your school up to the community sessions that Starting Blocks will be delivering across the local area, offering your children a complete pathway into sport. So in summary, Starting Blocks is a fun, innovative programme to offer lots of opportunities to young children to get involved in physical activity and in athletics. It will develop children's fundamental movement skills needed for a range of sports, not just athletics. And we hope it will encourage children on a sporting pathway for life, where they choose to be physically active throughout their lives. If you would like more information on Starting Blocks, or if you have any questions about what has been discussed today, or you would like to find out how your school can get involved in the Starting Blocks programme, please contact me. My email address is on the screen now, but it's hannah.pretty@welshathletics.org. You can also visit the Starting Blocks website for more information on startingblocks.co.uk. Here you will also find some of the stay-at-home cards we produced in the summer during the first lockdown to support children at home. You can also check out our webinar on physical literacy via our Welsh Athletics YouTube channel. This was recorded in the summer and it provides a bit more information around our sport and physical literacy, so please do feel free to check that out. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest.
I'm going to run through for you now how both the Dyfed and West Glamorgan school districts set out their competition pathways at primary school level, as both are slightly different from each other. We aren't saying these are the right way of delivering an athletics programme to schools, as every district and area is different, be it in terms of the number of schools, the key volunteers, the facilities available and the geography of the area. These are just two examples of what happens in both West Glamorgan, which is equivalent to the Avonlea Towie Secondary School District, and Dyfed. You may see some similarities as to what is delivered in your area or district and adapt it to your needs, or maybe take away any good ideas. Both the Dyfed and West Glamorgan school districts have a long history stretching back decades with close links to the clubs. These key links are largely established due to many of the key volunteers also having an association with their local club in some sort of voluntary capacity. The two key volunteers who should take credit for the events in recent years are Gerald Davis of Dyfed and Anne Owen of West Glamorgan. It is very important that regular, well-run athletics and cross-country events are held so that children will gain a positive experience of the sport, which in turn we hope will increase the chances of them taking up athletics and joining the club system, therefore creating a larger participation numbers at the base of the pyramid. These pupils will eventually be moving up through the age groups and event disciplines, some of which may then progress into selection for Welsh schools teams when they are in secondary school. If school pupils don't get the chance to experience athletics, they are much less likely to take up the sport as one of their hobbies, so it's important for us to try and put on great events for them. Cross country. West Glamorgan split all their participating schools into between 6 to 8 clusters, consisting of up to a dozen or so schools in each of these. Each cluster then holds 3 fixtures, with the top individuals and school teams in each progressing to the West Glamorgan Grand Final. The results of the West Glamorgan Grand Final then decide the team of around 12 boys and girls each to represent West Glamorgan against Dyfed in the inter-counties match held annually every March. The Dyfed Primary Schools Cross Country Championships are held each March, every year at the United County Showground in Carmarthen. Between 12 to 1,500 athletes take part from around 70 to 90 schools. The first 10 finishers from year 6 and the first 10 from year 5 are invited to compete for Dyfed in the match against West Glam Primary Schools a week later at a venue in Swansea or Carmarthenshire. In Dyfed, there are several other standalone cross-country fixtures organised by clubs or sports development departments, providing even more opportunities for pupils to participate, such as the Carmarthenshire Primary Schools Cross Country Championships, held every September since the year 2000, again at the United County Showground in Carmarthen. In this, there are 8 races setting off every 10 minutes in school years 3, 4, 5 and 6. In the last 10 years, there have been between 1,000 to 1,200 competitors with around 40 to 50 primary schools taking part. Other standalone fixtures in Dyfed include the Pembrokeshire Primary Schools Championships, which is a collaboration between Pembrokeshire Harriers and Pembrokeshire Sports Development, which also has well over 1,000 pupils participating each year. The Earth holds several primary schools cross-country races in Ceredigion, with the primary schools cross-country event part of the National Earth Sporting Festival held in Aberystwyth at the beginning of May every year. Carmarthen Harrier coach Carol Jones has for several years organised the Gwendryth Valley Primary Schools Cross-Country Championships, and Gerald Davis of Trots Running Club has in the last 2 years organised a small primary schools cross-country league competition for schools in the St Clairs and Whitland area. Track and field. West Glamorgan are very fortunate to have access to the Swansea University indoor track, enabling them to offer track and field opportunities year-round. There are 2 competitions for schools to enter. Firstly, there is the Indoor Out League, which has up to 6 pools of 6 schools in the group stages. There are 2 fixtures, one held indoors and the other held outdoors. At the conclusion of the 2 fixtures, the top school in each group progresses to the best teams final held in July, with the best 2 runner-up schools making up the 8 school teams for this final. Secondly, there is the area sports. This commenced way back in the 1960s, held in local parks, which then in the 1980s moved to Morva Stadium, with its infamous dip in the home straight for those of you old enough to remember. The area sports fixtures are held outdoors in the summer term. They consist of up to 8 schools in 8 groups. The top 1 or 2 individuals, rather than school teams, in each event discipline then progress to the best individuals final held in July, which is also the selection match for the Dyfed versus West Glamorgan inter-county fixture. Dyfed schools. Since 1990, the annual Carmarthenshire and Dyfed Primary Schools Athletics Championships have been held at the Carmarthen Athletics Track in Johnstown. The Carmarthenshire event is held in May and the Dyfed event in June. Just as for the cross-country, both fixtures are one-off mass participation events, which are open to all primary schools in the Dyfed or Carmarthen district. The competitions are held over 3 to 4 hours, depending on how many entries there are. As for the West Glamorgan Championships, the top 4 individuals in each event discipline then progress to the inter-county match versus West Glam, also held every July. The venue for this match, as it does for the cross-country, alternates every year between Swansea and Carmarthen. Beneath this, there are again numerous athletics fixtures and festivals organised by clubs or sports development departments for schools to participate in. For instance, the Pembrokeshire Primary Schools Championships. In terms of school-to-club links, those pupils that are selected for county teams who are unattached to a club are invited to join their local club. In addition, all these competitive opportunities can spark an interest in many of the participants to join their local club too. Primary sports hall athletics. In the winter, indoor sports hall athletics started in 1992 when George Bunner came to Carmarthen to give a demonstration to primary schools in Carmarthen Leisure Centre. Every year since, Carmarthenshire Primary Schools indoor championships are held in November, and until recently a Dyfed event was held in February as an alternative to indoor athletics, which can be held in Swansea. We will give a little more bit detail on sports hall athletics for you later today in the secondary schools workshop. In addition, numerous come and try coaching sessions are also held throughout the academic year at both secondary and primary ages. These create additional opportunities for pupils to experience athletics, as well as an ideal opportunity to upskill staff on how to coach some events, in turn getting more athletics delivered in schools and delivered well. So all in all, there are probably around 70 to 80 primary school events held across both school districts across the academic year, providing plenty of opportunities to participate. I hope this has given you an idea of how schools events could be structured and run. This slide shows the links to all the affiliated clubs in Wales, and not just those that have junior sections, if you would like to develop and create any links to them. Also included are the contact details of all the club managers in Welsh Athletics, including myself. If you have any specific questions, now's the time to ask them. You might want to know how we run and find enough volunteers for all these events, what event disciplines the pupils take part in, or if you'd like me to elaborate in any more detail on anything in the presentation, then please ask away now. Okay, I don't like listening to my own voice, but I hope you're still awake after that. So if anyone's got any questions on anything to do with the primary school competitions in West Wales, you can post them in the chat room. Thank you, Catherine. Glad you thought of that question. Yeah, so from a primary perspective, what we'll do then, they'll have their annual general meeting. Normally they'd have it each September down the cafe at the university. And then once we've got all the affiliation forms ready, we then distribute them to all the schools with all the various contacts we've got. Only the dates of the actual grand finals are set because we have so many different clusters. Essentially, every single Wednesday, there's a cluster either going on for cross country or track and field from a West Glam perspective. And again, with David, before the lockdown situation, Heather would set the dates, and again, with his vast array of email contacts, and he'd send those dates out to the schools.
So as Andrew rightly said, I hope that in today's presentation that I'm able to help anybody listening overcome some of the potential barriers that you might feel that you face when delivering athletics, how athletics can contribute to the new curriculum reform in Wales, and then how we design our athletic programme by term, how this impacts on the competition calendar, and then finally an opportunity for any questions at the end. Oh, sorry, just trying to click through now and it's not working. There we are. So through conversations with colleagues, I was able to identify 8 common barriers of participating in athletics at secondary school level. And the reoccurring topics tended to be lack of equipment, number of competition, conflict and interest, particularly of Key Stage 4 and older pupils, transport to and from competitions and training, teachers' knowledge of some of those more specialised events, and then safety of delivering those athletics lessons, and then finally the perception that it was a one pupil lesson whereby there's a queue of 30 pupils and one person's throwing. Hopefully during the next half an hour I can bust some of those myths and give you some potential solutions to those barriers. But I think the key thing to mention here is that each school is going to have their own set of unique circumstances, and it's important to work with what you've got and definitely work with others. Ask for help within your school, ask for help within your county, and usually I found that if you do ask, there's usually somebody who is willing or able to help you. So as I said, so for the first time in 30 years, Wales are looking at reforming their curriculum. So it's a big opportunity for PE, and I wanted to highlight to you how athletics can contribute to that Welsh vision. So they've got 4 pillars of learning, and the 2 that really stood out for me were athletics would allow pupils to build high expectations and enable all learners to fulfil their potential, as well as supporting learners to live a healthy and prosperous life. So PE obviously falls into the health and well-being area of learning, and the Welsh Government are keen that PE is holistic and allows for physical, emotional, mental and social well-being of Welsh pupils. At the end of their life in school, I think we would all be in agreement that we hope that pupils leave secondary education healthy and confident, and with a passion for some sort of lifelong participation. And the way that athletics is going to contribute to this vision is by ensuring that athletics is progression focused. Competition does have a place in secondary school, but it's important that it's against others of similar ability, or possibly pupils competing against themselves in a school environment. And obviously, like we would with any sport that we deliver, you need to educate the pupils on the benefits of athletics and promote lifelong participation in all exercise, as well as athletics and its contribution. So the Welsh Government have outlined principles of progression, and they suggest that any sport and activity should be increased in breadth and depth, deepening understanding and disciplines, refining skills, transfer learning, and increased effectiveness as a learner. How you're going to do that is by designing your schemes of work to increase breadth and depth of knowledge and transfer skills. So, for example, throwing a cricket ball and throwing a javelin, the similarities in techniques, which will allow pupils to have a greater understanding of both sports, not just athletics in isolation. So when planning your curriculum, it's important that your curriculum is relevant to the learners in your school. We want all pupils to have a positive experience, particularly of athletics in this case, but every sport that they participate in secondary school. And the way that this is going to happen is by having managed competition and managed progression in a safe environment. I've put our delivery by term on the left-hand side of the screen at the moment, but I just wanted to take this opportunity to say at Key Stage 4 in Cowbridge, we've actually chosen, we provide 2 options for pupils, and they get to choose between the options in most cases. So for example, the cross-country might go alongside a football block, and Key Stage 4 pupils get to make a healthy choice on where they'd like to spend their time. A little bit of planning in terms of to try and predict a 50-50 split, and luckily through time and experience we have been able to do this quite successfully. So that just explains a little bit about the compulsory and the optional lessons and what I mean by that. So we actually deliver athletics across all 3 terms in Cowbridge, and the reason that we feel that we're able to do this is because of the versatility and the number of disciplines that athletics has. So in the autumn term, we deliver cross-country, 4 compulsory lessons for Key Stage 3, 2 compulsory lessons at Key Stage 4, with the option of progressing onto an additional 2 Key Stage 4 lessons. In the spring term, so after Christmas, we focus on sports hall athletics, 4 lessons at Key Stage 3 and an optional block only for Key Stage 4. And then finally, slightly different in the summer term for both Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4 pupils, we have a compulsory block for both. I've put there 8 lessons, but it's usually half a term dedicated. So it'll either be after Easter, that initial Easter to May period, or May to June period, depending on what side of the timetable they fall, their lessons fall. So we've chosen cross country, and how we actually run it in school is we look at progressive distances. So the maximum distance we have chosen matches the maximum distance that they would run in their age group in a league extracurricular competition. So as you can see, they're under 13, so that's year 7 and 8. They start at 2 kilometres and they build up to 3.5 kilometres, and you can see the other age groups below there. In order to achieve this smoothly and efficiently, we've got pre-planned routes. So we've actually got a marked big lap and a marked small lap, so that we are able to have a participation focus and a progression focus. So every time the pupils run, we always measure their big lap time, which for us in our school is our 2 kilometre mark. I think it's appropriate here to mention that if you don't have fields available to you, look at your school site, look at what you have got, where can pupils run safely. If you've got a blocked off car park, and that pupils can run the perimeter of obviously safely, or 3G, it would just be a case of that you'd have to increase your lap numbers in order to get the distance. But I would certainly invest time here in pre-planning and saving those routes, so that year on year you can pull them out and you know exactly where you stand. So as you can see on the diagram there, so for us in Cowbridge, we're lucky enough to have a field space that we could use. We've got a 2 kilometre big lap and a 1 kilometre small lap that we are able to negotiate, and then, as I said, record progressive distances so pupils can track their own progress. It's going to be participation focused. So for some pupils, that might mean that it might be building up from completing a 2 kilometre lap where they've had to stop and walk, building up to being able to run a 2 kilometre lap at a steady paced jog where they're not having to rely on cutting back and walking. Secondly, as I mentioned, after Christmas, we offer sports hall athletics. So this is a real opportunity, I think, in athletics to offer reciprocal and pupil-led learning. So we offer standing long jump, speed bounce, shuttle runs, vertical jumps and chest push within our sports hall athletics lessons. And I think it's probably important to point out with sports hall athletics that you don't necessarily need to invest in the EVECT equipment if that's not something that you are able to. So for example, for your standing long jump, whilst the EVECT standing long jump mat has the distances printed onto the mat, a normal gym tumbling mat and a tape measure works just as well. And in fact, from a PE point of view and a cross-curricular point of view, I would probably encourage the latter, because pupils are then able to incorporate their numeracy skills, being able to set themselves up and be responsible for measuring their own distance and recording their own progress. Again, you don't need boards for your sprints. You can do a speed bounce over a hurdle. All those creative adaptations are appropriate, but just be consistent. So again, that your results can be comparable. I have put the link, I think Zoe's going to post in the chat now, to the EVECT website and the competition section specifically. I would start, if you're new to sports hall athletics, I would start here so that you can see the end goal and what you're aiming for, and then look at ways of adapting, being creative to allow you to teach sports hall athletics in your school. As I said, focus on what you have got. You might not be able to offer all activities, but have a look at what you think that you can and start there. The only piece of equipment I would particularly advocate is the indoor shot puts that EVECT offer. This is because I found it really difficult to replicate the weight and the size and the shape of an indoor shot put with any other piece of equipment. And also I find that they're really useful when you come to your traditional track and field as a safer task than with live equipment, so that you can have the both running parallel, but I will explain a little bit more about that in a moment. With our sports hall athletics block, we actually spend 2 lessons practicing the event. So we have specific instruction cards for the pupils. They set themselves up into small teams of 4 and they actually go around the sports hall with a lot of freedom really to go and practice the event, the things that they think that they need or want to do well in, just recording results and just with a focus on technique and practice. In the second 2 lessons of the block, we actually get them to run an indoor sports or athletics competition. We allow them to do this almost entirely facilitated by themselves, and we use iPads to record the results. So again, they time, they measure throws, they measure jumps, count repetitions, and we get them to record this on a Google form. I'm sure we're all familiar at the moment with Google Forms and you know, the abilities of a similar Microsoft program with working from home, but it's really simple. We just simply get the pupils to record their team name or their name, and then the event that they've participated in, and then finally their result. Obviously, with that sort of independence, there is room for pupil error or pupil exaggeration or pupil mistake. However, usually they're quite obvious, those anomalies, and they stand out. So for example, if they've measured their standing long jump in inches as opposed to centimetres, those things do stand out. It is competition focused, but it is in quite a safe environment. And again, the pupils have responsibility for recording their results. And we've found actually that they're quite respectful of this, and they tend to be, I would say 99.9% of the time, very honest. And again, I think it's about recognising that at this point for sports hall athletics, they're not in a county competition. They are just doing an inter-class competition, and they actually really enjoy the freedom, the responsibility. Finally, in key stage, in the summer term, both key stages do a half-termly block of compulsory traditional athletics. So for us, what this looks like is 100 metres, 200 metres, 800 metres, 1500 metres, high jump, javelin, shot put and discus. I think it's important here, again, to look at your facilities and your school and focus on what you can do and try not to worry about what you can't do. We are lucky enough in Cowbridge that we have got a high jump bed so that we can teach that safely. But for me, unless you have got the equipment, the appropriate and safe equipment available for you, I would avoid, particularly with jumping, I would avoid any sort of watered down version of a long jump from a safety perspective. Here, you want to max out your coaching opportunities, your officiating opportunities, and your cross-curricular links. So get pupils organise themselves. Can they organise a 100-metre race, and can they collect results on their own and give those results to you at the end of the lesson? Can they organise or seed possible races? Give them pupil-focused and pupil-centred opportunities within an area of athletics where, particularly when you are throwing, it's going to be quite autocratic and quite teacher-led. So I spoke earlier about how I found that the indoor shot puts were quite useful, and this is a small example of why I would particularly invest in that indoor equipment if you have the funds available to you. So as you can see on the diagram, this is a typical example of how I would set up a throwing event within a secondary school lesson, key stage 3 or 4, maximising the pupil-centred opportunities. So the blue dots represent pupils who will be throwing with live equipment, so the appropriate weighted shot put, javelin or discus. On the left-hand side in the yellow, I've got pupils who will be doing the same event but using perhaps the effect indoor shot puts, perhaps light indoor javelins, indoor discus, things like that. And what we do is we have the same task, and all pupils will still throw on the teacher's command. They will go into the safe zone in the middle, and their partners who would be stood behind them will go out and collect and prepare to throw. On the yellow side, the slightly lower risk training zone, I would have a reciprocal coaching card perhaps, and I would have given them a specific coaching focus. So perhaps it is the release point of the throwing utensil. They are able to feedback and coach one another there with perhaps a lower percentage of my vision and my control, but they are still going on my command using much safer equipment. On the left-hand side, I've got my live equipment and I've got my throwers who will be throwing out into the higher risk training throwing zone, who might have a focus on measuring distances. So it might be that I have cones spaced 5 meters apart and they are just simply aiming to move from one 5 meter zone onto the next 5 meter zone. And I think that's just quite a nice way to overcome that, you know, 1 or 2 throwers going at a time with simple focus of just throwing, teacher measures, come back, join the end of the queue. Just I haven't missed anything there. So delivery of athletics. For Cowbridge, we've actually linked it with the competition calendar. I think it's appropriate to recognise here that obviously our competition calendar runs that in the winter term we have cross-country, sports hall athletics and summer track and field. I know, for example, when I worked in Talbot, it was slightly different and some of those track and field events slipped into the September term. Do what works for your school and your situation. This is just an example, don't take it as gospel, but certainly look at planning your scheme of work to increase in sophistication and deepen learning over time. So don't rush, don't expect too much too soon, but certainly give them those opportunities and recognise from the pupils in front of you what's going to work best. For example, would the lively class benefit from simply having a greater quantity of throws using indoor shot put than they would from a really strict disciplined lesson that's led by me using live equipment? What is going to get the most out of the pupils in front of you? They need to make connections, they need to transfer skills and use the individual and collective needs of the class to inform what you teach and how you teach it. So for us in our scheme of work, we have task examples, and I tried to include a pupil-focused task and a more teacher-led focused task. But for assessment of learning of each individual pupil, we obviously use the measured and recorded results that we use. As I said before, we enter it in on a Google form and that all goes onto a spreadsheet, and it just allows us as well to give pupils a benchmark against themselves in the future. So I can say to the Year 8 pupil, when we look at the shot put, I can say, well, you threw X amount of meters last year, perhaps you're going to aim for, you know, whatever it might be this year. And that longer term record I've actually found is really powerful, and pupils really appreciate that you remember and you've taken an interest in their progress, when there's nothing quite as powerful as when they say to you, Miss, what did I do last year? And you can refer to your list and give them those exact numbers, because some pupils won't remember by any stretch of the imagination, or you know, won't even be close to what you to what they can actually throw or run even. So we actually, as I said, sorry, I lost on a tangent there. As I said, our extracurricular and our clubs run alongside our competitions and our delivery of athletics across the 3 terms. Oh, sorry, back a page. If you want any more information on delivering athletics within lessons, there's a few really good websites there. I know Joe next is going to talk about the run, jump, throw. I think Zoe's put on a few links for me now, but certainly look there. It's a really useful resource to give you ideas about how you can be creative and how you can encourage that pupil-focused learning. Welsh Athletics also have a free YouTube channel that has got webinars, and again, that is filled and littered with ideas of how you can deliver athletics in your secondary school, ring your local clubs. Pick up the phone, don't be afraid. Often a small conversation goes a long way. Often they're happy to lend you equipment. Perhaps they'll come down and run a little bit of in-house CPD for your staff. Perhaps they'll even run or hold some specialised extracurricular sessions, or possibly even school lessons. Within Cardiff and the Vale, something that has recently been put together, I think it's been running for 2 or 3 years, that has been really helpful, is that prior to competitions, they've held an evening of coaching by local specialist coaches. There was a tendency to focus on things like high jump, long jump, hurdles, some of the more pole vault, some of the more specialised disciplines. As I said, this was an opportunity that we were able to provide to pupils who might not have access to a club or might not have access to equipment within schools, but for them to gain experience and gain knowledge from the experts prior to competitions, building confidence, and obviously again maxing out participation. That worked particularly well from a teacher's point of view, because pupils were able to attend that off their own back, in a sense of it wasn't a school specific run event. So teachers didn't necessarily have to take and supervise the pupils. They were able to go and participate with parents, with parents picking up and dropping off there. So back to the competition calendar. Sorry, apologies, I'd forgotten about that bit. Our competition calendar, our extracurricular clubs marry up with the way that we have planned our curriculum. So whilst I appreciate that when you look at it as a whole, it looks quite a lot. I think it's really important that if you are new to particular disciplines, or if you are new to competing in athletics, that you start small and build up, to avoid committing to things that you aren't able to see through, or also to stop you feeling overwhelmed. Allow yourself to learn the ropes, so to speak. Speak to other schools in your area, ring your your county representative in Welsh Athletics. They'll be happy to support you and talk you through where's the best place for you to start, in terms of your athletics experience. So from a cross-country point of view, we've got a number of fixtures, from league fixtures, which I know again varies from county to county, but we hold quite a few in Cardiff and the Vale, 3 to 4, South Wales champs, county champs, Welsh champs. And we run, from September to October, we run a once weekly cross-country club that pupils can participate in after school should they wish. Sports hall athletics, we don't actually run an extracurricular club at all within school, but we do enter the competitions, which is 1 per age group. So it's 1 for Key Stage 3 and 1 evening for Key Stage 4, and then obviously the finals if you qualify. The reason that we're able to do this is because of the way that we run our lessons, and we are fortunate enough that we can pick our school teams for those events using the results that we have in lessons. Key Stage 4, you might have remembered it was an optional block. We actually only tend to offer sports hall athletics to our Key Stage 4 club athletes, or those who have shown an interest. So we almost pitch competition and we wait for athletes to come back to us on that point. And that was simply because of a conflict of interest with maths and English GCSEs being at a similar time. We found that that worked more effectively for us and our pupils in our school. And then finally, there's a number of track and field events that are run off-site there, from championships, cup match, Welsh schools, NASUT, and building up finally to SIAB there at the end. So I've got a number of people listed below on this slide, and I'm going to talk to you about each of those in turn. And really, I think it's about focusing on what they can do for you and how you can overcome all these potential barriers by using the resources around you. So teacher responsibility in terms of competition and extracurricular club. As PE teachers, we tend to keep it all into ourselves and try and be the superheroes and do everything. However, I've found that by emailing all staff and putting an open door policy for any coaches, keen runners, minibus drivers, organised people who enjoy paperwork, by asking, I've been really surprised about the number of people who have come back and have said, you know, oh, I haven't got perhaps a coaching qualification, but I'm a really keen marathon runner. I'm happy to come out and help you with your cross-country training, for example. I think if you ask, you'll be surprised actually at how willing people are to offer help to you. Not only does it obviously lighten the load on you as a PE teacher, but it also raises the status of the subject and the sport within the school. It makes people and staff aware of what you are doing. And again, when you're going, you know, cap in hand to the head teacher asking for support for perhaps transport, if you have this raised status, I find that usually they're quite willing to help you. Again, email other local schools. So in Cardiff in the Vale, as I'm sure many other, we've got WhatsApp groups, we've got round robin emails. Email and ask one another, can they lend you equipment? So for example, if you're interested in developing your sports hall athletics, not sure on what to invest in terms of equipment, but you know that X, Y and Z school down the road already offers sports hall athletics, speak to them, you know, have conversations. When do you run your sports hall athletics? Can we borrow your equipment at such and such date when it's off your planned curriculum to allow us to run and provide our pupils with the same opportunity? Can you double up on transport? If you've got a smaller number of, so perhaps the Key Stage 4 sports hall athletics event, or perhaps the age group or the combined event, if you've got a smaller group of pupils who are attending extracurricular competitions, can you double up on transport? Can you get one coach to stop at the 2 or potentially 3 schools? Again, when you're going cap in hand to the head teacher and suddenly you've already said, yes, but we're going to divide the cost equally between the 3 schools, often they are very keen and pleased that you're thinking of them in the purse strings. Can you double up on extracurricular clubs? It can be really difficult when you feel pulled from left to right, but perhaps I could go down to a local school from Cowbridge. On a week 1, we run a cross-country club from their school. We're lucky enough to have minibuses, so I transport them by minibus. We do our training there, that the teacher runs it there, or I run it, and vice versa. Can they come back to us so that there's one member of staff looking after pupils from both schools? Again, can you help one another out in a competition environment? So if you're sat in the stands with your pupils, can you work with the other members of staff around you to monitor and help pupils get to their events and understand the programme? Can you provide internal in-house CPD to one another? I just think the key is use other people. They're usually more than willing to share their knowledge or to share their experiences to help you. Your pupils in your school, don't be afraid to give your pupils responsibilities. Nominate captains, pupils who have got a keen interest. You know, it might be pupils who you know to be particularly organised. On the day of an event, can they check that pupils are in? Can they be responsible for giving out and collecting kit? Can you give them a timetable of track and field event? And will they be responsible for ensuring that people are in the right place at the right time? Parents, I've found that actually parents are more than willing to help. Often it's the parents who are going to be at the events all day, every day. We all know them. You turn up to your athletics event in the summer and they've arrived in the car park before you've got the minibus in, and they're there long after you've left. Would they be interested? Would they be willing to be a team manager? Do they have any coaching qualifications? Would they be willing to contribute and help out with your extracurricular extracurricular programme? Can they drive a minibus if your school will allow them to do it? Can they take a second minibus and allow you to provide an opportunity to a greater number of athletes? Can they manage, one that I found is really useful, can they manage their own children's conflict of interest? So particularly when it comes to Key Stage 4, if their child is, has got English last lesson and we've got to leave for our competition at 2 o'clock, can they participate in their English lesson? And can mum or dad be responsible for driving them down to the track after school and allowing them to compete in their event that doesn't start until 4 o'clock? If you can recognise that these conflicts of interest are happening, pick up the phone to a parent. Often a solution can be found which allows pupils to do both. And then finally, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what we do in Cardiff and the Vale. So the chair and the general overseer of all things Cardiff and the Vale athletics, Pete Morris, plays a huge role when it comes particularly, not only to secondary schools, but particularly to secondary schools. And he really does an outstanding job there. I can't sing his praises high enough. But something he recently did, which I think was really positive, was he delegated the management of one track and field competition to various schools. So you were given a track and field competition as a school, and you were in charge of putting the timetable together, you were in charge of collecting results, organising staff and officials, all the things, getting information out to schools, so on and so forth. This is something that's proven to be really positive, and I think it's actually given schools a bit of confidence in their ability to run athletics competition when we tended to have a heavy reliance on Pete and Sarah and the people who sat at the top of our committee. Whilst I fully appreciate there's a huge initial time investment that came from the Cardiff and the Vale committee, I would like to hope that they'd be in agreement that actually that paid off, and now we've got this confidence and now we know what we're doing. It's just a case of rolling it out year on year. And I think it's probably something that potentially as a county we need to look at doing that in perhaps the Cardiff and the Vale and the sports hall athletics, look at sharing that responsibility a little bit more rather than a few schools providing a lot or a few individuals providing a lot. And just before I give you an opportunity for any questions, I feel that it's really important that my parting point is in athletics, it's quite unique in its opportunity. So your pupils who enter Welsh Athletics county competitions, any of the competitions that I just mentioned, can actually be picked up and recognised by Welsh Athletics because of the way that the results are stored and collected, and they can actually start their way on the Welsh Athletics talent identification programme. So you might have a pupil who breaks a county record at a combined events competition, and they're picked up quite rapidly by Cardiff and the Vale Athletics and then going on to Welsh Athletics. And that is something I think that is, well, I had a little discussion with Andrew, I think it is something that is unique to the sport itself. So huge opportunities for your pupils, particularly your talented pupils who you might choose to enter into the competitions. So the 8 potential barriers are up there on the side. I hope that I have given you some solutions and some take homes. I'm aware that I've been rabbiting on for a little bit of time. So I'd like to open the floor to any questions that you may have, or any points that you would like me to expand on. Oh, silence, tumbleweed.
I think you've got a question from Tom John.
Oh, have I missed it?
Yeah, just asking how we find enough volunteers to run all the events. Do you want to mention from a school's perspective, and I can talk about it from what we do from an inter-schools perspective?
I think from a school's perspective, my first point would be start small. don't bite off more than you can chew. Be realistic about the volunteers that you've got available to you. But before you cut yourself off and you cap yourself at anything, you need to ask. Go and ask parents, ask teachers, ask other members of staff in different subjects. Ask and ask again. And then once you've got a clear number of volunteers that you've got, you then need to be realistic about the pressure that you're going to put on those volunteers, and then what you're able to do. And then I think as well, it's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight. But if you've got a team of 3 keen volunteers, that you're able to work with those volunteers, build confidence and do it well. And then I think usually providing those volunteers with a positive experience will lead to a snowball effect, whereby people will be less hesitant. If you've got somebody in the staff room saying, actually, it was really good, it was really nice to see the kids in a different environment, you should come along next time, it does tend to have that positive snowball effect. So first of all, ask, and secondly, be realistic. You certainly don't want to put off your volunteers that you've got by overworking them or putting too much pressure on them.
So from an inter-schools perspective, when we hold the primary events, all the schools are aware that they must provide one judge/one team manager, and because we only put on a handful of events, it tends to be easy to cover all the disciplines. And then when we do the secondary school events, every school is allocated the same discipline to officiate each year. I know in Dyfed it's slightly different. The 4 areas swap round track, field and time. Steve might elaborate on that later. But one unique thing we do down in West Glamorgan is that when we have our best individual finals, we actually use our under 17 and under 20 athletes from the local clubs to judge them for us, because they're not power of 10 club fixtures, for those of you familiar with that, and they get a great experience from doing that. And in the cross country, we even use them as the hares for the races, and pay them in Easter eggs to do it for us. So we tend to get a lot of volunteers for that year on year as well. So if there aren't any more questions, this is your last chance. We'll have a little break now, so thank you for that, Hazel.
Sorry, Andrew. I've just noticed another question from Tom there about how we find out about and promote secondary school competitions. If I could just touch on that quickly. For us, as a secondary school, the easiest way to promote competitions is through during lesson time. So we actually have, at the beginning of the first lesson we see them of a week, we almost have a 5-minute meeting after the register, and we just promote any extracurricular clubs that we have, any competitions that we have coming up, and we also have a notice board in the P area that all pupils have to walk by. And it's just, again, it takes time, but it just becomes that second nature. They know to go and look at the notice board, and it's just about using the moment where you know that you see them and they're listening. So again, after the register, so they're able to take that information in and make a choice about what clubs they would like to attend.
Okay, so I've just done another one pop up here. Just an agreeing. So Stacey's telling us that there's a lot of pressure at the key stage 4 pupils are under, and they've been told by senior leadership team that they're not able to attend competitions. It can be very frustrating for them. So yeah, I suppose it's a challenge learning how to deal with your particular senior leadership team.
Set up your own competitions. It supports the children to be able to set up the competitions themselves, which nicely follows on, I think, from where Hazel was saying about how the pupils can then start to set these sessions up themselves. What there is on there as well are a series of award programs, so pupils can compete against themselves to gain personal bests in all of those different events. As I said, we're going to have a look at the red resource today, but the white resource will also be available to you alongside the red one if you book onto that training. You can see on the screen as well, there is also a primary version of the resource, and that is a separate course and a separate training programme, again, that is on offer through Welsh Athletics, and the links and the dates to those will be provided for you all at the end. So when we start the course, what we would look at first of all is we want to make it relevant to you and to your teaching experience. So to do that, we need to know what you know already. What are your experiences in terms of your own teaching athletics in your school? And what in particular would you like to find out from the course when we deliver it? Obviously, we will have different people on the course, but we might find that we have quite a few similarities and we can guide it towards that. Some of the barriers that Hazel shared before are very common thoughts that we have and considerations on our course. How on earth am I meant to provide a throws lesson for a group of 30 children that potentially are a lively class, should we say, when we're dealing with potential weapons of war sometimes, as we can think of, cannonballs and spears. So how are we going to make this safe? How are we going to make it engaging for everybody? How are we going to give everybody enough opportunity to do that? There might also be a fear that if you have a pupil at Key Stage 4 that is potentially a talented athlete, how can you support that pupil in the lessons when you don't know the technical information to the greatest amount of detail to be able to observe them and give them guidance from that? So we have a bit of a conversation first of all to find out what you would like to know, and then we can tailor that part of the course to that. We then have a look at the delivery of your athletics in schools. So what do you deliver? How do you deliver it? When do you deliver it? And what are those characteristics? Is it building up in terms of the development of the pupil, or is it purely a performance measured approach in the fact of the first thing we get out is the stopwatch and the tape measure because we're competition focused? And athletics leads us into being competition focused, and we know that. But at that stage then, who are we not giving the opportunity for to try and develop? Hazel mentioned about all of those pupils, and that's brilliant how we can bring everybody in, get those to do the registers, get those to do the lists. If we think about our sport, we would be nowhere today, and lots of us, are on the call without our officials, our referees, our timekeepers, and these are all still absolutely vital and vital support personnel that we have within our schools. And through my other role, that's vital that they're now actually, some of those are going to Tokyo as well. So we need to be considering all of that all of the time. And being mindful of that, we're then developing the whole child. We're starting to think, yeah, we know PE, it's a massive part of health and well-being, and developing the psychosocial aspects of our pupils as well as the physicality is going to be absolutely vital. So how are we doing that? How are we building their teamwork? How are we building their peer support, peer review? How are we helping them to gain in confidence? Are we jumping up the steps too quickly that is not allowing them to be able to do that? And then we think about how we integrate that athleticism into our teaching. I noticed Gareth popped a message into the chat before. Athletics is the basis of all sports, and it truly is. That's that athleticism. Being able to run, jump, throw, and run, jump, throw well opens up a massive minefield of opportunities for you. And that's that physical literacy that we all know and talk about so much. How can we bring that into our lessons? And then we think about when you and your school deliver those lessons. Do you deliver it as Hazel's school did in a term-by-term approach, or is it purely an 8-week block in the summer, or even a 6-week block in the summer, because we've got to fill tennis in as well? And within that 6 weeks, we've got to fit all of the running events, running fast, running far, running over obstacles. We've got to throw things, we've got to jump over things, we've got to jump into sand, and we've only got a few weeks to deliver all of that. You can very easily see how the development of each pupil falls backwards because we've got to get pupils into competitions. So how can we support you with that? And we hopefully be able to do that with this resource. We've got lots of different resources within the app for you. Some of those are there shown at the bottom, and we'll go through some of those in the meantime as we go through the options today. We also consider on the course, we have a look at videos. We look at video analysis of all of the different events in athletics. We allow the opportunity to see videos, to go into the breakout rooms, have a chat. What did you see? What would you do? How would you progress this activity? How would you backstep this activity? How would you develop the pupils if you see this? So we consider all of the different areas to give you that support around that, to help you to develop each pupil on as you move through. We look at the technical areas of running first of all, and then what we start to look at is how we can build in the skills that we already know, what we've learned now in the running activities, potentially skills that we're more confident with. And then we start to think, where are we seeing that now actually in a jumping activity as well? What do we see that we've already learned that we can now build in for us as teachers, but also for the pupils so they can build on their learning as well? And then in the throwing, quite often seen as the more technical areas, how can we build on what we already know to guide our pupils through? Now, this wheel you may have seen before. This was a theory that was developed initially by a lecturer from Edinburgh University by the name of Michael Jess, and it was first noted in 2004. And what he did, he just looked at a random selection of sports. It was done in Ireland, so you can see that the Gaelic was down at the bottom. But he just had a look at a random selection of sports and had the consideration of what would happen if a student could not catch, if they could not catch confidently, if they could not catch well. How many sports would that then potentially in the future close off to them? And this theory was then brought to life a little bit more, quite more recently in 2018 through the coaching manuals by Sports Coach UK at the time, which we now know as UK Coaching. And what they felt was just in that small selection of sports, almost half of those sports are closed off to those pupils if they cannot confidently and securely catch and implement, so catch a ball if it's being thrown to them. So lots of those sports then are closed off to those pupils. So then what's the impact on those pupils for those PE lessons? What is the emotional impact for those pupils themselves and their confidence levels and how they're going to drop? How might that manifest itself for you as a teacher in your day-to-day school life? Are these the students that forget the kits because they've got cricket? Are these the students that are brought in a sick note because they've got netball lessons? This is where we need to think, how can we then impact in terms of our pupils? Have we thought about the why? Is it because that we could do something differently to engage our pupils, to support them and help them to re-engage, because we're going to support them in not particular skills of netball, but helping them initially to be able to catch, to find different areas of support in their strength. So what the team at British Athletics did, we took it a step further and we said, what happens then if these pupils can't efficiently run, jump or throw? How many sports out of that small area would be closed off to them? And we looked at it and we said, wow, that is almost 3/4 of those sports if a student cannot efficiently run or jump or throw. So that physical literacy, that athleticism, the basis of all sports, that underpins so many sports, we're now closing those opportunities off. We're closing the opportunities off in school time for all of those sports, but also as a life skill. How are we removing all of that? We could be building it in. And how can we do that? What knowledge and what skills do we need to have to be able to support our pupils, to keep them engaged in some form of sport throughout their life? And what we can see here is some common shapes. Now, Hazel spoke about common shapes and being able to throw. We'll have a look at those later. Looking at common shapes in running. Now, we can start to see straight away with Thierry Henry, we've got that drive off that forefoot, almost that straightening of that back leg, that leaning forward into an accelerated pace, driving an elbow back, lifting a knee high. So to do that, he needs to have his hips nice and high to start with, that tall posture. We can start to see a similar skill again, a similar technique again with that high knee, almost straightening of that back leg, that driving of the elbow, again, that lean into the acceleration and that driving off down and back of that forefoot. The picture's the same. The sports are completely different, but running is impacting on all of these sports. How would these, if these were your students in school, and we didn't do athletic skills throughout all of these different sports, and again in hockey, the same pictures again, we're starting to see common shapes. So what we're saying is now, although we've got athletics, yes, we can do it throughout the terms, but we can also do it throughout the sports. We're looking at common shapes. And we can see then when you look at Usain Bolt, we've still got that driving arm action. We've still got those high hips allowing that knee to come up nice and high. We've still got that driving off from that back foot. Common shapes that we could have learned throughout all of the different sports throughout our school teaching. So this is probably something that you've seen many times. I'm sure all of you will have done in your teaching education. It's something that we share quite a lot. The unconscious and competence model, the conscious competence model. And the way that I teach this is possibly a way that you've learned it as well, is by thinking about a skill of learning to drive. When you all get in the car for that very first time and you're 17, you just assume you're going to know what you can do because, you know, your granny can drive, so how hard can it be? You quite quickly get behind the wheel and realise that you haven't got a clue what you're doing. You don't know what you don't know. And then we move into that skill, we move down where we quite quickly now realise we don't know what we're doing and we have to start to practice it. It's a new skill. We're building on those skills, and that's a really powerful stage in stage 2 where we're starting to really stretch and to challenge, and those levels of skills are starting to be added on. And then we start to realise what we're doing, but we have to think about it all the time. So this is our mirror, signal, manoeuvre phase. We know what gear we're in when we're going to turn right. And eventually, as we all do, we get into a stage where we're unconsciously competent. We don't have to think about it. And then we can start to build on those skills a little bit more and challenge ourselves by possibly going on a motorway. But if we think of that in terms of our pupils learning a skill, going into that stage 2 is absolutely crucial. It's that stretch and it's that challenge phase. It's also the stage when our pupils are absolutely at their most vulnerable. If we keep them in that stage for too long, where they know they can't do it, think how that's going to feel to them. They're going to look at that and think that task is completely impossible for me to achieve. And if I can't achieve it, am I even going to try? Again, the following week, they've forgotten the kits. They've brought a note in. So how can you look at those almost baby steps approach so that they do quickly move to stage 3 and around to stage 4 before you can add on another tiny layer of skill into stage 1 again to keep moving them around? We need to keep them in that bottom box for the shortest time as possible to increase that confidence. That is the absolute critical stage, because if we lose that confidence, that's that health and well-being aspect really starts to impact. And our pupils not only don't build in physicality competence, but their confidence levels drop. So their psychosocial development really starts to have an impact as well. If they can't develop any of the areas in terms of physicality, or we can't move them on as quickly, could we do as Hazel said, because we bring them in a different way? So they have that level of success and they continue to practice that level of success and feel involved. If they keep involved, they're much more likely to keep practicing, and that physicality starts to be brought to the fore. And that will happen with the different connections that they have, the different peer reviews that we put them with, how are we pairing them? Are we allowing them to be creative and set up their own programs? And are we giving them support that they need and giving them the feedback, timely feedback, when it's appropriate for their learning and their development? So what we have and what we provide in the terms of the course and the app, it will be there for you as well, is we look at how are we going to get from A to B. Now, we mentioned before about that blue resource that was the primary resource. That's mentioned there and noted in that 5 to 11 years. So whilst the app doesn't contain the primary information, it does contain some of the primary detail to allow you to know what your pupils should be at by the time they get to stage 3. Now, in reality, we know that not every pupil's going to be there. So you've got that opportunity then to build on those skills and to simplify any areas that you're looking at. We're looking at the safe steps to encourage our pupils to move from that stage 2 to stage 3 of the learning as quickly as possible. And this guides us to know at which stage and at which time to add on that new level of skill. And as it says, all of this can be found for you on the app. So what we have now is a series of a progressive series of learning outcomes. Now, every one of those you could steal from that and create your own learning objective for your lesson. We call it physical me. It's the physicality progressions that we're looking at in terms of the athletic skills. This one is for the sprints. We will also have it for the hurdles, the endurance, all of the different types of jumps and all of the different types of throws as well. As you move up through the age groups, you build on the skills that have been learnt before. So the level of complexity increases, so you can move straight across the line and start to see that if you have a challenge in your class where you need increase the level of challenge for people in your class, you will be able to do that by just moving across the pathway. It's a natural pathway for the pupils to follow. We also think about how we empower the pupils to be able to progress themselves. So for that, we created the thinking me. Again, more learning objectives, but now ones that all students will be able to achieve to a higher level. Again, this is where our coaches, officials, referees, these thoughts are processes that we can start to work towards. They're integral to our sport, to every sport, but they can all achieve. Not only they can achieve, but potentially this is an area in which they could thrive. Again, a progression that you can use as you need. We also have the social competitive me. So learning to work with teammates, peer support, peer review, learning to compete under the pressure of competition. Students have now spent so long away from their friends and their peers, the opportunities for the emotional and the psychological benefits in this one simple area of learning objectives is absolutely huge. So you have three completely different areas in every single element of athletic skills that you could focus on for your learning objectives and create your schemes of work. But we give you schemes of work as well. So you've got different options, pick and choose your own, or we will provide some for you. This block of work is 6 weeks, but if you can see at the bottom, extending the scheme of work, if you use this in allocation with that white competitions app and checking progressions, it can be moved up to an 8-week block, a 10-week block, or a 12-week block of work in a single scheme of work focus. The focus is taken directly from those learning objectives in thinking me, social me, and physical me. And each lesson focuses on 2 particular areas, be that running and jumping, jumping and throwing, throwing and jumping. So it's got that differentiation between the groups. Cross-curricular links are on there for you and any equipment that you might need. A quick swipe across on the app gives you what we would call the backside of the card, where we look at the learning outcomes for the pupils and how we're going to measure that progress. So extra support for you. We look at all of our measuring progress in terms of a traffic light approach. And what we would be looking at in this allocation is for the red area, all pupils should be able to do everything in the red box. Most of your pupils should be able to do everything in the amber box. And some of your pupils will have progressed a little bit further to the areas that are in the green box. So for you and your delivery of lessons, we would pitch it to amber. That's where most of your pupils should be. But you've now got the opportunity to simplify with the red box and the opportunity to challenge some pupils with the information that is on the green box. So as I said, all those schemes of work look at individual lesson plans, and the lesson plans are there for you as well. There's lots of series of these as they move through. All of these schemes of work as well, once you book onto the training, once you have the app will be updated every 12 months and new schemes of work and new lesson plans will be added on every time. So you're never going to get to a point where it's going to run out. It's going to be renewed constantly. All the information is on there for you in order to deliver these lessons safely. And on the back, so flip side of this card, we've now got the pupil learning, the key teaching points, key photographs, focus points for that particular lesson. Again, pupil learning is based for you in amber with options of how to simplify and options of how to challenge. You've got cross-curricular links at the bottom as well, so you can directly go to that. And exactly as Hazel said, it's almost like we were working as a double act. Mathematics, measuring the time or the distance, so we can start to think about how that works in terms of keeping everybody happy, in terms of through your school, through Ofsted, we're all talking on that same page. Some of the events are more technical than others. All of the events will have an event card, so you can pick and choose which ones you feel that you might need more support for. These cards are there for that purpose, to support you. They break each of the skills down into phases. You can see the hurdle, we've broken it down into the 3 phases of takeoff, of clearance, and of the recovery. Now, if you can't see that clearly enough on the photograph, if you need it, you can see there's a video icon on the image as well. So that's clicking on that video icon on the iPad will take you directly to a YouTube clip of that athlete doing that exact skill when we filmed it at the time. So all that is there for you and to support you. You also have the ability on the app to be able to draw on any and highlight on any of the pages, and also to send any particular individual page to a colleague to say, this is what we're going to look at now. You could potentially draw a line across the young athlete's back, say, look, I'm looking for this straight angle, so that the pupils understand that as well. The cards that you have, you can see at the bottom of the screen, we have 3 particular areas: pupil task cards, teaching interventions, or inclusion tips. And we can go directly to one of those areas by clicking on that link. The pupil task card link takes you to a series of 4 progressive cards, and these are those. The first card would be the one that we used in the primary resource, but again is there for you if you need to simplify. And what that looks at is a case of a mimicry. Can you run like Usain Bolt? Can you copy Billy? Because this is what Billy's doing. Stage 2, we give them between 4 and 6 technical points. And we say, can you look at any of these technical points, and are you observing this in any of the pupils that you're watching? Stage 3, we start to break those phases of the activity down, and we get our pupils to start to think about looking and observing and seeing if they're seeing a match to the card or a mismatch. As we then move into key stage 4, if we've got pupils looking at GCSE level, those technical points are removed, and we're asking the students to work out what those technical points are for themselves to see if they remember. Again, back to that card, you can see we highlight the teaching interventions at the bottom, and that would send you directly to a teaching intervention card. It's amazing how we can go straight from hurdles to high jump in the interventions. Well, this is just to show that we have the different areas of where we can work with the different events. So what we have here is different series of different activity cards, again with videos, some notes pages as well for further support as you need it. One of those activity cards would look like this. All of the information is on there that as a teacher, you can just pick up, grab all of the equipment, the space, however you need it, set it up and run with it. All of the information on the front of the card should guide you to set that activity up nice and safely in terms of the different numbers in your group. We've put age 12 years on there, but what we're looking at as well is more stage. So you may want to tag back a little bit. You may want to move forward a little bit with your challenge. And the swipe of the card, again, gives you the reverse of that, which looks at the teaching points. The focus is on the pupil learning, the physical me, and then options of differentiation, of simplify and challenge. What you also notice on the bottom of this one is on the purple section, the think inclusive. So step, and if you've got any pupils with additional needs and how you can support them in those lessons. We have, again, on the bottom of our card, going back to the beginning, an inclusion tips, which will send you directly to a series of cards that support particular needs of pupils that will be in your group and gives you a little bit of extra guidance around that. Lots of different cards on there to give you that extra support. We then have a look at the jumping pathway. So again, how are we going to get our pupils from A to B? And in jumping, what we think about is earning the right. How are we earning the right to go from a 2-footed takeoff in standing long jump sports hall to a 1-footed takeoff, the amount of extra force that's going to impact? What do we need to see first? We start to look at some areas, what we call a golden thread. What have we seen in running that we can now see in jumping? And we look at the picture at the bottom, we've got that same driving elbow back. We've got that same push off from that back foot, and we've got that same straightened back leg. We've got that same high hips and that knee coming up. So that helps you as a teacher because you can focus on that same teaching point through running and jumping, but also your pupils can focus on that area as well. They can focus on that same skill that they've just learned. And then we start to see some of the areas and common shapes where these jumps impact in sport. And we've got a couple of incredible pictures here from our badminton player and Michael Jordan leaping up. Incredible athletes having that athleticism as able to be able to do this. Apologies for the colour of the kit on that card as well, but you can see the impacts of the power of being able to jump up. And start to looking at common shapes. We can see the hips, for example, coming up nice and high that we've seen in our running. Throwing those hips forward and up allows a creation of an arched back, which we can particularly see on our badminton player. That is allowing an increase of momentum, increasing that speed, which is a very similar picture that we can see in Greg Rutherford doing his long jump flight. Very similar movements, just as Hazel said, we're now crossing sports, not just crossing events. We start to have a look at the cards again in terms of triple jump. There's so many parts of triple jump, it actually covers over 2 different cards. And you can see on there as well, there's a play option. So we would play this on course to ask, what can you see? What could you do if you see this particular skill? And even on the card on the young lady doing the, if you look at the hop flight, look at those images, hop takeoff, hop flight, that straightened back leg, that high hips, that high knee, exactly the same skills that we've seen in those running. Again, we've got those buttons at the bottom, we can go directly to. We've gone directly to the interventions. Now we can break this down. This is the skill we want to learn, but we're breaking it now down into a lesson. What's this going to look like for us to be able to teach? We've only got 1 sandpit and we've got 30 pupils. How can we break that down so we can deliver that lesson? Again, video icon, that lesson has been filmed for you so you can actually see how it works. There's also on the one that circles a blue bit of information. That means that there's also an extra resource, and this extra resource might be this one. How are you going to lay those lessons out? Now, Hazel mentioned this as well, looking at different areas and having a number of pupils working at the same time, as opposed to the approach on the right, where only 1 pupil's working to the sand. We can look at the approach on the left, differentiate the levels, and have different numbers of pupils at different levels of target aiming towards the sandpits. When we have a look at high jump, we know that some pupils will be looking at the scissor jump, some pupils will be looking at the Fosbury flop. So we need to have some information of the link between the two and that the skills are quite similar. And higher jumping, doesn't matter whether our athletes are at a stage, whether they're going over a small hurdle or whether they're going over the bar in a Fosbury, we're still getting them to jump up and the skills are still going to match. They're still going to be the same. We might look at some lesson layouts. So the picture at the top has got some SAQ hurdles and looking at a diagonal approach. The one at the bottom, we're moving towards a bar. With my pupils, what I've used quite often is the Avec hurdles, those soft, the cardboard ones. They're higher than the SAQ hurdles, and they also fall over if we need them to, if the pupils are not managing to clear over the top. So it's nice and safe. And again, another area of focus on this, on the cards, and more information for you would be provided on the teaching interventions, breaking down the different areas and approaches of jumping. We can now have a look at how they can practice actually looking at that curved approach to the bar. And finally, we look at the throws pathway. Quite often the area of fear, as we said at the outset for teachers, not as we would look at it in terms of athletics coaching, any more of a technical area than running or jumping, but it is that area where there's that extra element of danger, so we need to ensure that we're keeping our pupils safe. Again, how are we going to develop our pupils from A to B? How are we going to move them up that pathway? How are we going to manage a group of 30 pupils to stay safe when we're throwing live equipment? Again, we can start to have a look at common shapes, and we can start to see what we saw in the jumping activities. We can see a bit of a curve in that back, allowing that element of speed to increase because we've extended the range of movement that we can actually have. We can see hips being brought forward and being brought up. We can see the arm extended, again, to increase the amount of movement that we can have. This is the same for all throws. We look at the pole throw here, but a very similar action with their legs, followed by their body, followed by their arms. And then you can see with our javelin throw with Fatima, exactly that same curve arched approach, keeping that elbow and arm nice and high. Now, the basis of all throws, which we cover on the course, is this. This is our power position. Get this right, and your teaching of any throw will be so much easier. All the opportunities for you as a teacher and all the opportunities for your pupils will grow from this. We'll look at in terms of the shot put and all of the throws. We'll look at the standing throw first of all. So you can see in the standing throw for shot, again with the video icon, we've got a line that we've drawn down from the chin to the knee to the toe. This is the element of the position what we're looking at before we can create a form of torque with our legs moving before our arms to allow that release high and fast. And you can see in that last photograph, those hips moving nice and high, right to the top. We then progress this, and this is there for you as you need it for your pupils. If your pupils progress, we've got information of how we can look at the glide approach, which is basically, in essence, getting to the power position at speed. It's literally no more than that. But you could support your pupils with extra information. It's just increasing that torque. And again, you can help them further. So if you've got a pupil that's looking towards the Welsh schools and they're in the shot put event, they will be looking at the rotation. So again, increasing the amount of speed, arriving to that power position with a rotation, more torque, more speed. How are we then going to support our pupils? We've got that guidance there to help you to do that. To help your pupils through the whole lesson, we've got the activity cards again to support you. And again, video evidence. We support you with all of the grips. All of that information is there from the app for all of the different throwers activities, how to hold the equipment, how to carry the equipment. All of that will be there for you. The power of cross-curricular and cross-curricular sports in throwing is immense. We've got the different throws here in terms of looking at a pole throw, which we would know as javelin. But if we have a look at it in terms of the discus, we can start to see the cross-sport areas become quite powerful. And all of these throwing skills can be learnt in all of these sports. It doesn't have to only be in an athletics lesson. Athleticism, physical literacy can be impacted throughout the whole year. You have a power as a teacher to encourage the students to think not about an athletic skill, but about a movement pattern. So they're not playing football or rugby or doing a particular type of throw, but they're looking at a movement pattern that they then can transfer through rather than the sport itself, but it becomes a learned skill. And that gives a good grounding for all of your pupils to be able to take on any sports throughout their later life. Much as in education, primary, key stage 3, all of the bases are covered to allow at key stage 4 and beyond that specialism focus to be selected. If we didn't cover all of the bases at the first levels, that specialism becomes really restricted and really impacted. But by developing all of these elements for our pupils, we're giving them the maximum opportunity, not only throughout their school life and confidence, but also throughout their life beyond, and any sport that they might want to take the opportunity to deliver and to take part in later on. And all of this is going to be covered in the course that you can book onto. So we have the secondary dates on the left-hand side. There is a link at the top that directly sends you to the Welsh Athletics website. I think Zoe's going to pop that directly into the chat function for you as well, so you can save it directly yourselves. On the right-hand side as well, we also have dates for the primary courses, which also will be delivered by me. So apologies, you won't be getting away from me, but the information is on there for you as well. All of those dates are active now, and they can all be booked onto as you need. And I will close that down and come back. And if we've got any questions have popped into the chat.
Thank you for that. Perfect timing. You had 10 seconds to spare before we minute break. So, we just had one question from Stacey, I think. Again, one I didn't know off the top of my head. Do you know, might have to get back to this, can people purchase the apps separately without having to go on a course, or is that something we'll need to follow up on?
Yeah, the app can be purchased through the usual places. If you join it through the course, then it's free as part of the course, but you can use them. It used to be £25. I think it's probably still the same for each of the individual apps. If you buy the secondary app, the secondary competition structure comes with that. If you buy the primary app, the primary competition structure comes along with that.
Okay, so thank you for that. Again, very comprehensive.
You would have picked up, I think, on the blurb on the conference agenda was around looking at and comparing the competition programs, as Andrew did for the primary sector earlier on. But my feeling was that it was important to try to place that info into a bit of context, and particularly, I think, for those of you that are new to the teaching profession and possibly going through initial teacher training at the moment, to give you a sort of overview, if you like, of Welsh Schools Athletics, where we are at the moment, and how we're looking to develop things. So it's an opportunity, I suppose, to sort of explore and to celebrate the things that we're good at, but equally to look at some of the challenges moving forward. So it's important, I suppose, to try to get an understanding of the importance of the school programme and where the Schools Association sits within the larger athletics community. That large cog that you can see there at the bottom of your screens at the moment says BA, which stands for British Athletics. British Athletics is the sort of the part, I suppose, of UKA that deals with high-level performance and high-level competition. So, the two really are one and the same. Major changes within that organisation over about the last 12 months, particularly with the appointment of a new CEO. That has meant now that we are working far more closely with our colleagues at UK Athletics, and have become, I think, now a key influencer of change as that organisation tries to move itself forward. Just picking up on a few of the acronyms on that page, just in case, again, there are things that you are unfamiliar with. R4W stands for Run for Wales. It's the charitable arm of Welsh Athletics, and it's responsible for large range of events, but particularly the Cardiff Half Marathon. And the role of Run for Wales is to generate income, and then obviously to feed that into Welsh Athletics to move the sport forward. DSW are our colleagues in Disability Sport Wales. Obviously, again, we work very closely with them, trying to ensure that the sport is fully inclusive. And then the fact that you've got the Welsh Masters on there as well indicates, I think, the responsibility that all the organisations have in terms of making sport a lifelong activity, and a major sort of mover really in ensuring people's health and well-being moving forward. There is one cog that we probably should have added to that, and that is the social running group, which has now been up and running for a few years, and that is Run Wales, not to be confused with Run for Wales. So to look, I suppose, at our core purpose, it would be to offer every child in Wales that opportunity to run, jump and throw, as highlighted in Joe's presentation earlier on. It's important to realise at the moment now that currently in development is a brand new service level agreement between Welsh schools and Welsh athletics, which will define that relationship moving forward. And Welsh schools will then, as a result of that new document, will then look to redraft its existing constitution. Just give everybody an opportunity for a moment just to take in the sort of 4 key objectives that I've identified there on that page. So, sort of our priorities, I suppose, and the question then is how we encourage buy-in from schools and colleges across the whole of Wales. If you look at number 1, I think we'd all probably agree that the vast majority of the children that we see in athletics have had those first experiences within a school setting. So it is vitally important that we upskill and continue to help PE staff and our primary colleagues to develop those skills. Number 2, which says establish vibrant club at the heart of every sporting community. Okay, yes, again, not a priority, I guess, for school teachers, but it's about having local clubs where if we do talent ID an exceptional individual within our schools, we are able then to channel that individual into the club system. So it's sort of the fact that we are providing the raw material, if you like, and the club then is able to provide some of that specialist coaching. Establish access to running groups for every adult. Well, again, you know, you could say that again that would not be a priority in schools, but the role, I think, of school sport would be to light that fire and to make exercise, health and well-being lifelong themes. We're particularly good at number 4, in all honesty, right? The difficulty that we're having at the moment is retaining young athletes within the sport. We have a high dropout rate at under 17 and under 20. In other words, school years 10 and upwards, and it's a challenge trying to motivate kids and keep them involved in the sport. Just to sort of give you a little bit of background to the way that the relationship has changed between Welsh schools, Welsh athletics, particularly since 2014. We had a funding arrangement which came into place. Initially, that was for 4 years, but eventually it extended through and finally ended in March 2019. Plus, obviously, we had the employment for the first time of a Welsh School support officer, myself, on the basis of 2.5 days per week. It's important, I think, to recognise as well the additional support that is out there through the athletics network teams led by Welsh Athletics Head of Development and Participation, Chris Moss. You'll notice there on that graphic that you've got the 8 school districts and the amount of support that is available to those school districts from the different members of the team. they were the ones you'd remember that Andrew identified at the end of his presentation earlier on, and include himself. Clearly, you know, the fact, if you look, for instance, there at the Avenir Tower, at the amount of support available to Avenir Tower, is marked up as 2.5 days, but we have got to remember that Andrew spreads his time across both Avenir Tower and Dyfed, plus obviously his role extends way beyond just supporting schools athletics, because obviously there is a commitment to club and regional activities as well. But you know, they are useful resources which schools really need to be aware of and use. Okay, so we now get into what a school district competition structure would look like. You can see there a series of 5 different competition opportunities across the year. And what we'll now try to do is to contrast what it looks like across 2 of our school districts. So if we come to the offer in the Avenir Tower area first, cross country there would consist of 3 development events which are held early in the autumn term, immediately after school. That would consist of 2 sort of traditional cross-country taster events, and we'd conclude that then with a cross-country relay. The sports hall competition, that's normally held in Swansea University in December, with again an emphasis on participation. So you know, it's about getting kids involved and engaging with our school community. We would expect then roughly 20+ schools to take part in our district championships and our cup and plate qualifiers. Our district cross country is normally in February, and we would normally look to use a more challenging course than for the development events. So that they would tend to be normally at somewhere like Margam Park, Singleton, on the Knoll grounds in Neath, for those of you that are familiar with the Avenir Tower area. Last year, for the first time, we actually combined our district cross-country championships with the Glamorgan Valleys. That was held fairly successfully. Wasn't a great day weather-wise, but that was held in Margam Park. And again, you know, it was something I think that we would probably continue to do moving forward. District track and field over the last few years has been late April, early May, very early in the competition programme, for reasons that I'll come to a little later in the presentation. And our cup and plate event tends to be in June. And when we flick to the next slide, you'll notice straight away there, I think, that the actual competition offering is exactly the same, yeah. But it's I suppose the real contrast come in the way then that it's offered, yeah. That is simply down to the geography, and you know, the fact that most schools within the Avenir Tower School District can travel to any venue within our district, probably within 25 minutes of leaving school. That is not the case in Dyfed. If you're in school in Aberystwyth and you need to get to Carmarthen, that you're looking at the best part of a 2-hour drive. So you know what Dyfed have decided to do over the years is to divide itself up into 4 areas. That is Brianny, which basically is Carmarthenshire, Llanelli, Pembrokeshire, and Ceredigion. Some run cross-country leagues, others run freestanding development events. In terms of sports hall, the competition tends to be focused around the Carmarthenshire and Llanelli schools, although all the Dyfed schools do receive an invite. Again, because of the larger numbers, they tend to be on separate days. The year 7 and 8 on one day, year 9 and 10 on the other. And it's a similar sort of format then to the cross-country for the track and field and the cup and plate, where again the initial competitions are within those 4 areas, with progression then through to Dyfed finals and then through to Welsh Schools Championships. So just to sort of put a bit of meat on the bones around what our championship and competition structure looks like, I've put those in the order within the school year that they take place. The indoor combined events is an open event which is held jointly with the Welsh Athletics Combined Events Championships. That's normally October, November. The Inter-Schools Cross Country, again, is an open event. The last year it was held, 2019, it was held jointly again with the Welsh Athletics event, the Inter-Regional Cross Country. So, you know, jury's out at the moment on that one as to whether that that combination will continue, but just keep an eye open for information around that. National cross country, national track and field, qualification there is through individual district championships across the 8 districts, and it is district teams then that are selected to take part in those 2 competitions. The Cup and Plate is probably, for me, the best grassroots event, track and field event in Wales, because of the number of kids that we get participating in it. That would be individual school teams that again would qualify through individual school district qualifiers. Normally around 12 athletes in each team, and we would get 64 teams through to that final in Brecon in July of each year. And finally, we will just touch briefly on Sports Hall. Now, although Sports Hall is not part of the officially part of the Welsh Schools programme, it's run by the Welsh Athletics development team. Now, again, each school district would have a qualifier and then would use their own selection methods then to allow for progression through to the national final. National finals held in Cwmbran in March of each year, and then there is then the opportunity for districts who are successful at that to progress to the UK final, which for the last couple of years has been in Manchester in April. All those that have got a P after them, I've simply put that there because it indicates that, that there's an opportunity there to progress through to international competition. And those international opportunities are listed on the next slide. The whole Welsh Schools International Programme is overseen by the Welsh Schools Executive, but delegated duty for oversight of that programme falls to the Welsh Schools International Secretary. At the moment, that is Zane Maynard, who's been in post now, I think, for coming up to 2 years. Zane is a teacher at Morriston Comprehensive School in Swansea. The combined events is held at the same venue each year. That is an invitation event, which is run by Scottish Schools. That's held in the Emirates Arena in Glasgow, where the last European Indoors was held. That's normally in November or December each year. The SIAB, Schools International Athletics Board, that stands for. The SIAB Cross Country is held in March, and that rotates around the 4 home nations, with Wales due to host now in 2022. Track and field is July, again rotates. It's due to be held in Derby in 2021, if that is obviously able to go ahead, and then it goes to Dublin then in 2022. The Welsh Athletics Under-20s match, the sort of final international offering, if you like, that's held again in July of each year. It's hosted by Welsh Athletics. It's normally held at Cardiff, although Swansea have hosted as well in the last couple of years, and it allows a Welsh school team to participate in addition to a Welsh Athletics team. and there's a joint selection process that takes place to ensure that both organisations are able to field the strongest possible teams. So obviously, you know, I suppose, again, to put things into context, all that's got to be paid for. And there was a funding arrangement that was put in place in 2014, which involved Run for Wales committing a £55,000 a year grant to us as an organisation. We continue to pull in sponsorship from the NASUWT around the cup and plate competition, and roughly each year we would generate around about 13k in terms of our own generated income. So, you know, our sort of our turnover, I suppose, would be around about 73,000 over that 5-year period. Sadly, the funding from Run for Wales came to an end in 2019. That was always going to happen. We were fully aware of that. So there's been a seamless transition, to be fair, now to a centrally funded programme where all our domestic events are covered by the Welsh Athletics competitions budget. Our international programme then is covered by the Welsh Athletics performance budget. We obviously continue to get the 5,000 a year from the NASUWT, and we continue to try to generate as much of our income as we possibly can in order to try to offset those costs that have been incurred by our partners at Welsh Athletics. And the other major change, I suppose, was that I then moved. I was, to use the technical term, 2B'd across, so that I became then a Welsh Athletics employee rather than an employee of Welsh Schools. So if we're going to talk about challenges moving forward, it's probably worth trying to divide those up into two groupings. And firstly, I'll talk about the sort of the operational things that are issues for us. The first one there talks about engagement with staff at school district level. So, you know, most of our school districts at the moment are struggling for personnel. Hazel mentioned in her presentation earlier on the way the Cardiff and the Vale now are looking to address that particular problem by sort of delegating responsibility for competitions down into individual schools. There are other school districts within Wales that do that, but on a rotational basis, which means that you'd organise an event once and then it moves on. So, you know, there are models out there which possibly could work across Wales. But, you know, as mentioned earlier on, all our school districts are quite different in the way that they're set up and quite different in the way that their personnel work. So, you know, it isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. Hopefully, with getting better engagement from staff in schools, we can remove that problem of the inconsistency in competition provision, and we can make sure that it is a little more uniform right across the piece. I've put in there issues around ITT. Now, that's probably quite poorly worded on my part, to be honest with you. It would have been better, I think, if I'd said that the current PGCE structure with the 2 periods of teaching practice tends to ensure that student teachers are not in school at the time when athletics is being taught, so they don't gain those experiences. So, you know, I think that's something for us to look at moving forward in terms of education as to how we address that and how we work with our ITT providers to ensure that becomes part of the program within the PGCE course. The exam cycle is a continuing problem for us. It seems to extend in terms of time in each year. So, and that has the effect then of squeezing our competition program either earlier or later, right? Again, no easy solution to that. You know, despite the fact now that we've had no formal exams over the last couple of years, that situation is not likely to improve. The other issue that we need to be thinking about moving forward is how our school districts are funded. The last two local authorities, I think, to be funding their school district athletics programs were Flintshire and Powys, and both of those have pulled up the drawbridge in the last couple of years, and that funding has ceased. So, you know, all our school district activity now is funded directly through affiliation, and many schools pay that from their directly from their budgets, which obviously then is taking valuable resource away from PE departments, which is a concern. On a more strategic level, you know, we talk about the engagement of staff at a national level. So it is trying to encourage, I suppose, the next generation of PE teachers to become more active within the Welsh Schools Athletics Association, to help us to move it forward. Development of a sustainable structure at national level. Well, again, you know, I think we've moved towards that over the last couple of years. That continues to, well, is an ongoing issue. The development of a sustaining funding model, we're probably there on that now, in all honesty. Welsh Athletics have been extremely generous in the way that they've looked after us since, you know, the first grant funding became available in 2014, and I do not see that changing. That new partnership agreement will be with us shortly. New constitution will follow on from that, but again, you know, not a concern, I suppose, for today. The other thing is it's important to be aware of is that we do have charitable status. So, and that is something that we do not make best use of at the moment. So again, you know, moving forward, it's ensuring now that we are able to maintain that charitable status, but also to start making better use of it so that we can generate funds through the charity. And that basically, I think, draws us to a close on that one. So if I can just stop the share for a moment. Okay. Now what I will try to do, there are some questions I think that have been dropped into the. I've got one here from my colleague Barry Edwards. Hi Steve, are there plans for Welsh Schools track and field final and the under-17 SIAB this year, or have they been scrapped for this year? Final decision is still to be taken on that one. There is a meeting now of the Welsh Schools Executive on Saturday the 17th, where we will consider whether we will be able to run our summer programs for this year, and obviously hinging on that then will be a decision around whether we will participate in SIAB. There is a SIAB meeting then again scheduled for the 24th of April, which again will assess the situation in the 4 home countries and obviously try to come to some sort of decision around that event, which is due to be in Derby this year on the 17th of July. So I'll just throw it open to the floor now, to be honest. So, I mean, if anybody's got a question that they would like to ask, choice is yours, either drop it into the chat or just raise your hand and we'll try to pick them up that way. Can't believe I'm